Hi, welcome back to this series on HPC cluster. And in this particular video, what I'm going to demonstrate or basically try to explain you how to establish a connection between your local machine, which is your laptop or your desktop, to a remote machine. In this case is our cluster or a high performance computing server, whichever is we have access to. For the demonstration purpose and for all the details I'm going to provide is around Xanadu cluster. That's what most of the researchers at UConn has access to. So the way you're going to establish this connection between your local machine and between your and the remote server Xanadu cluster entirely depends upon what kind of operating system you're running on your local machine, whether you are having a Mac or you're using a Windows machine. If you're using a Mac, then what we are going to be using is using a small utility called terminal, and this particular utility is located inside applications folder. So you go in under applications, look for utilities. Inside utilities you look for terminal. You double click it and the terminal will open up. This is a command line interface, so we are going to communicate in the terminal by the help of the commands. And the command what will we use to establish this connection between our local machine and the terminal is SSH, and it's a secure shell. When we're trying to connect as a user from our local machine, our aim is to establish connection between either Xanadu Submit External, Xanadu Submit Internal, or the transfer node. Now, I mentioned in previous videos that Xanadu Submit External is further split into 5 virtual nodes. Same is Xanadu Submit Internal. There are 5 virtual internal nodes. Now, as a user, when we can try connecting to Xanadu Submit External. So then we are going to use the command SSH, which is secure shell, and then we are going to provide the address of the machine we are going to connect to. So in this case, the machine we are trying to connect to is Xanadu Submit External. If that's what our goal is, we're trying to establish connection to Xanadu Submit External, then the address for that machine is xanadu-submit-ext.cam.ucsc.edu. Once you establish this particular connections, you will end up automatically you will be redirected to one of these virtual submit nodes. Out of the 5, you will land in one of those ones. Sometimes there will be a need that you would like to directly establish the connection between one of these virtual submit nodes. You can do that as well. In that particular case, the SSH command will be followed by the address of any one of these virtual submit nodes, and the address will be hpc-ext-1 to hpc-ext-5.cam.ucsc.edu. You provide any one of these ones, and in that particular case, the connection will be established between your local machine and one of the virtual submit node, the number whichever you have specified. The same thing applies for the internal submit node, and we can directly connect to Xanadu Submit Internal by providing the address xanadu-submit-int.cam.ucsc.edu. But in that particular case also, once you establish the connection by providing correct username and password, you will end up in one of these 5 virtual submit nodes. But let's say you don't want to go through Xanadu Submit Internal but directly want to connect to one of these internal virtual submit nodes. You can do that by providing the address to one of these particular one of the 5 virtual submit nodes, and the connection will be established. In order to connect to the transfer node, the address is transfer.cam.ucsc.edu. Now, just to reiterate the fact that Xanadu Submit External and HPC EXT125 are available from anywhere outside the UConn network, or from anywhere basically within the UConn network. Also, you can access these particular nodes. But the Xanadu Submit Internal and the internal virtual submit nodes are only accessible within the UConn Health network. So anywhere outside, if you're trying to establish the connection, you will need a VPN to connect to these particular submit nodes. Now, that's what we looked into case of a Mac. As I mentioned, that you use the command SSH space and the address of the machine. In case of the Windows, I'm not really aware of the newer versions of the Windows if they come with any utility to facilitate or establish a connection between your local machine to a Linux server, but the older machines generally didn't have any such utility. So for that one, what we need is a small software. In this case, what I recommend is the Putty. It is a very lightweight application. You can download from the link that is basically provided on the top. And once you download it and start it, is going to ask for certain specifications, and the specifications are pretty much the same what we saw in the previous slide. Is going to ask for the host name. The host name is the name of the remote machine, whichever you want to connect to. So if you're trying to connect to Xanadu submit external, then you're going to provide your user ID at xanadu-submit-ext.cam.ucsc.edu. If you want to connect to one of those virtual submit nodes, you're going to replace xanadu-submit-ext.cam.ucsc.edu with one of those virtual submit nodes. So that's pretty much the same. The only thing you keep consistent is an user ID at, and then you provide the address to the machine, or the whether it's a Xanadu Submit external or Xanadu Submit internal, or you're trying to connect to one of those virtual nodes which are within the Xanadu Submit external or Xanadu Submit internal. You provide the address of one of those ones. So you provide you that address over here. And the best practice I would recommend is to save that particular connection by a particular giving some name. It can be any arbitrary name, but give some useful, so you can relate like what the name stands for. So let's say if you're trying to Xanadu Submit external, I would label it as Xanadu Submit external. If I'm trying to HPC ext1, then I will maybe say HPC ext1. And whatever the name you give, you save by clicking over here. So you give one name and then click on the save button. The name will appear on the lower panel. You can have as many different names, connections, or different host names you can mention here, and can save each of those ones different names. So next time when you come up and start PuTTY, you will look, those names are available in the lower panel, and double click on it, try to establish that connection, and prompt to you with usernames and password. In case of a Mac, what we are going to do is the terminal, what we saw in a couple of slides back. In the terminal, in the command line interface, we are going to type SSH space your username or user ID, whatever over here, at then the address of basically the remote machine address, your Xanadu Submit external, Xanadu Submit internal. But if you want to bypass and want directly connect to the virtual out one of the 5 virtual submit nodes in Xanadu Submit external, or one of the 5 virtual submit nodes in Xanadu Submit internal, you can provide their address as well. Once you do that, you hit return. What happens is going to prompt you for a password. And what you do is you type your password. So in most of the cases, you will not see any movement when you're typing the password. It will appear that it basically completely frozen. It's not letting you type, but that's not the case. You keep on faithfully typing your password and hit return. If you have typed your password correctly, then it will let you inside the system, and you will see a welcome message. Otherwise, if you have typed the password incorrectly, it's going to prompt you to retype the password again. It's going to give you 3 trials. If you're successful in 3 trials, you're logged in. If you're not, then it's going to close that particular connection. That's not the end of the world. You go back and start the PuTTY again, or you type that SSH command in case of the Mac in terminal, and then it's again going to prompt you and give you 3 trials to give a correct password. So that's how you try to establish a connection in case of a Mac or in case of a Windows. So in Windows, you will need this small lightweight application called PuTTY. In case of a Mac, you already have a terminal. You can use the Mac terminal, or you can download other terminal versions that are out there for establishing the connections. But that's pretty much the way you try to establish the connection. In the next video, what I will show you is a hands-on how to connect using these commands, and try to show you how to establish the connection to different submit nodes or the virtual submit nodes.